and then discuss the other issues also. Um, so I would like to hand over um, and stop sharing my slides to Ms. Sneh Alam. She's going to talk about web freedom versus accountability. And just to give you a short information about her, she's a student at University of Amsterdam, which is in Netherlands, and she's studying political science, second year student. She's a 19-year-old, and also second major is you can see her. She just popped up there, and second major is media and information, and she just started first year. So that is two topics she's studying. She is specializing and will graduate in the area of public policy and governance. That's a mouthful for us. She chairs Presidium at Machiavelli, which is a political science association. Uh, I I assume it's one of the largest association of the university. And she is the bachelor representative of the program committee at the social science at UBA, which is the University of Amsterdam. Prior to this, she has lived and attended school in Denmark and in California. So she has world travel, seasoned young lady. I can brag about her because I'm the mother also, and she is also a lot of you know her as a baby because she has traveled with me to almost all ICC and Globacom, as few of my friends and colleagues always said she was the youngest member of ComSoc. So I will hand off my. Okay. Should I just mention the other speaker also? No. Give it to her so she can share her slides.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for having me here. 1 second, let me see if I can share it. Share. Is it sharing? Everyone can see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So, good morning or good evening, wherever anyone is. It's 5 a.m. over here in California, but thank you for having me again. So, my presentation is on web freedom versus accountability. And basically, I think it's a really interesting topic to look at, especially studying from a political science perspective, looking into the media and the internet. For me, being a Gen Z, I was born in 2001, so I've always had the internet present in my life, and it's crazy to me to imagine a life before that, but studying it has been really interesting. I remember the other day I asked my parents the first time they were faced with the internet, and it hit me that, wow, they're like, and like there's a time where the internet wasn't even widespread. Sounds crazy, but to me at least. Or, for example, when I was younger, I thought that the phone was as old as the human race because I'd always seen everybody with a phone, which was really embarrassing after a certain point. But then I asked my mom, and she clarified it's pretty new. But technology has made such advancements, and I think we take it for granted a lot, and we don't really look into it as critically as we should be. And that's what I will be presenting on, basically. So my agenda for today is I'm going to be talking about 4 major topics that I think is very interesting. There's algorithmic discrimination, content moderation, gig economy and urban infrastructure, and finally double logic platformization. And they all basically sound like really big fancy words, but they're pretty simple and part of our everyday life. And it'll be easy to understand. So algorithmic discrimination. So what is it? An algorithm, the first time I heard this was in calculus, and I was not happy about it. But this one is a computer version, and it's basically just how a set of rules are followed in calculation and problem solving. And of course, I'm looking at this in a computer setting or digital space. And as algorithms became more popular and more advanced, this helped companies become more efficient and became really important to everyday or all of our technology. And this led to personalization within websites and social media and so on. And with this, inadvertently it caused discrimination as well. And of course, discrimination, as you know, is unjust or prejudicial treatment of different groups of people or things. So I decided to look at the discrimination in three different mechanisms that we see in our everyday life. And the first one is something that we use probably every single day is Google search. And if you are to log out of Google, even if you're logged in, you'll see Google search is personalized to your own interests. If you look up university, for example, and I'm logged in, I see universities popping up from California or about my university in Amsterdam. But if you log out and you actually look up things, for example, phrases such as women should or men should, or black girls or happy family or doctor, engineer, it shows, and you go to images, you'll see a list of things that basically reflect what society values. For example, if you look up engineer, if you go to images, you'll see majority of the time white men and maybe a few white women and maybe a token person of color somewhere in there. And which is not reflective of our current society, and it should be much more diverse. But again, it reflects this discrimination and values that we have as a society. And it reflects also like the hegemonic dominant power that is currently running our society. And hegemonic basically just means dominant framework or this group of people. So I think that it's really interesting because it's something we use every day, and it also brings forth the question of whether it is the company that's accountable for this, or is it really us because we are the people. The algorithm reflects what is searched the most, but I think it's a very gray area because they're also what do you call it, reinforcing these stereotypes, negative stereotypes that we have as a society. The second one is machine learning, which is a phrase that is being used a lot. I hear it all the time. New thing, or not, maybe not a new thing, but hot topic. Basically, in simple words, is it's a machine or algorithm learning or mimicking human behavior. And the problem with this, well, it can also be very beneficial. The problem with it is humans are inherently prone to bias and prejudice towards other things and people. Everyone has it. It's human error and natural. So if a machine starts acting as humans, they're not going to remain objective any longer. And the problem with this is also in its development and technology, the lack of diversity. When you don't have as many genders or orientations or people of color in there, the machine is going to reflect who is developing it because they're the ones putting in the information. And if it's just one dominant group, it's going to not be useful to majority of society, and it's not going to be helpful if it's only appealing to a certain few people in the world. And we can see this example in facial recognition, which is being widely used now in US by the police here to identify people of interest. The problem with it is it recognizes the white people very well. However, people of color, especially Black citizens, their faces get mixed up a lot, which is very detrimental effect in society. So we can clearly see if there's more diversity, even having one or two more people, obviously ideally very diverse, but having that just in the development process in the long run will benefit everybody in society and make the product even more useful. And thirdly is recommendation systems, which is very obvious in Netflix or any other streaming show. They basically personalize your entire screen and show you all the shows you like, whether it's rom-coms and sci-fi and sitcoms or your 100% documentary and thrillers and horror movies. They cater to niche audiences, which can be seen as a good thing and in the sense that it's personalized. However, it also creates an echo chamber where you constantly get fed the same information and you're surrounded by the same thing and you're never introduced to something else. And another whole set of shows or TV that you might not even know you like. And this is dangerous as it can cause polarization. Obviously, Netflix is a pretty not simple, but nice example. It's not going to cause any big disturbance, but you can see in bigger picture that it can cause a lot of polarization. So that was for algorithmic discrimination. And moving on to content moderation. So who I always look at it as who and what is allowed to be censored, especially from a political science point of view. It's become very big in government talking about this. It's important to remember companies such as Facebook, especially. I wanted to say Facebook and Instagram because that's really relevant to me, but Instagram is owned by Facebook. A lot of things are now. And Twitter, that's another social media company. The important part is to look at them as technology companies first and not media platforms. So media platforms such as news and journals, they're held to a certain amount of ethical, guidelines that they stick to. Whereas technology companies, first and foremost, focus on capital gain and will always prioritize that over ethical problems. So looking at Facebook, since it is the biggest social media company, it has basically monopolized a lot of the digital space. And currently in the US, it is in the court right now. It has to group into different smaller companies now. But in 2018, there's a leak of their community guidelines, and which is how they content or moderate the content that is being posted. And it's very interesting to see other guidelines because it's, for example, they started monitoring political speech. Obviously, violence is something that we don't want to see, like really bad violence on social media shouldn't be posted. So it monitors that, but to a certain extent, it also stated that animal violence or violence towards animals would not be censored. So it's very interesting to see how they constantly are updating their community guidelines to appease societal pressures. And especially as the internet is becoming more widely used and more intrinsical to our society and politics and economic, every part of our life, it's becoming also a political issue. And another dark side of content moderation is actually the exploitation of workers. So basically, every single post being posted, there's someone reviewing a post every 10 seconds, actually. And imagine the millions and millions of posts that are being posted every day. And these workers typically are desperate for money and are typically not in the US or in Europe. So they don't have, they're contract workers, they don't have healthcare providing or anything or any security from companies such as Facebook because it's outside their country, typically in Asia or South America or in Africa. And it leads to higher rates of burnout. And seeing all this negative imagery also highly messes with people's mental health, which could be its whole own presentation. But that's another dark side that I actually didn't know about social media or content moderation. And finally, since 2016, fake news, Trump became president, became really big, and he took the social media world by storm, and it became politicized. We can see that in Twitter, there's warnings and fact checking now on tweets. Or when I post something about coronavirus on my social media, it'll have a warning and link you to the CDC website if you're in America or the EU or whichever country you're in for proper information. Or always say advice that this could be misleading information. So it's very interesting to see that, and especially with fake news. Now political speech has been moderated, whether it's extreme right wing or left wing, both sides can see this or has seen this as negatively. And it's very interesting to me because these guidelines of moderation is supposed to remain objective, as they say, but clearly once you venture into political speech and censoring that, it's not objective anymore. And we can see this manifest in Section 230 in the United States. It's basically a provision that provides immunity. You can see it on the right-hand side. Provides immunity for information services from civil liabilities. So basically, they can control their content however they want, and no one is allowed. Like if we sue them, they're immune to it. besides looking at politics and all of this, we can see this in other social movements that take this very harshly. If you look at the body positivity trend, or not, it's not a trend, movement on social media, I think it's very important for a lot of people, everybody basically. But the thing is, for example, if you're not a model and you're a bigger sized woman, especially women's bodies are being moderated a lot. And if you're plus size or if you're older or whatever, if you're not the perfect model type, you get censored a lot more. And this is just one way that it's showing up and can be discriminatory as well. So that's content moderation. Moving on to gig economy. So sounds fancy. It's just basically a free market system in which temporary positions are common, and they hire independent workers for short-term commitment. And I use this a lot. Uber Eats, Didi is popular in China, and there's Airbnb as well in the hospitality sector. So the goal of these companies is to become the center of urban infrastructure, and they do so by, what do you call it? Attempting to platformize urban infrastructure through dominating aspects of the economy, such as transportation with Uber and Didi, and making themselves basically an essential part of urban life. And I like to focus on Airbnb and Didi. So Airbnb has become very popular in the global north, as I call it, which is US, Canada, and Northwestern Europe. And they've basically become a very important sector of the economy in terms of hospitality. They have contributed to gentrification of a lot of neighborhoods. However, the reason they're very successful in Europe and US is because tourism is a really big part of the economy, or important part of the economy, and they contribute to that, and they bring in a lot of money to the government as well. So it's hard not to stop them, but they're definitely a big competitor. However, the problem with it is there's not regulations, for example, renting them, who is liable for damages that happen to the property or already previous damages. And because of all these issues, it's becoming a political matter as well. So as I stated, their goal is becoming a very important part of urban life. And they focus, basically these companies, share economy or gig economy, whatever you want to call it, they have a problem, find a problem, create a solution for it, which is very Silicon Valley-esque mindset, which seems very positive, and it can be. However, we need to, one thing I found, which was I never connected in my head, was they actually thrive on economic weakness. So during times of crisis, they come forth, there's a problem, they create a solution, and they basically state or advertise themselves as being promoting entrepreneurship, and you can work on your own time and for your own money wherever you are, and it's great, quote unquote. But the thing is, they actually this is catered towards lower income parts of society. Even my friends, some of them during Corona, COVID in lockdown, they signed up for Uber Eats in Amsterdam. They're biking, dropping off food, and it's basically catered to people who need the money. And it's become so big. However, the problem with it is the amount of money they receive from it is not a livable wage. Most people are working more than one job while doing this. And on top of that, they don't receive any benefits from Uber or Airbnb. Like, there isn't any safety net. For example, with traditional taxi driving, which is also in Europe, which became a really big problem with taxis and Ubers, they have unions, they have healthcare, they have a system of support, which contract workers will never have. And it was actually an issue in California. And the last election, it was the law that was being passed. The point of it was to have provisions for these contract workers and not treating them as such. But of course, these companies paid millions and millions of dollars in lobbying, and it did not get passed, sadly. So on the dark side of this, we always have to look at that they might be bringing in a lot of capital. They might be very successful companies, like front of modern lifestyle, right? But they're always, the backbone of it is lower income and part of our world and people. So another thing that I think is interesting is looking at the historic context of why these two companies, Airbnb and Didi, are successful where they are. And Didi is a ride-hailing app in China, and it owns about 94% of all shares of ride-hailing app shares in China, which is a lot, and clearly it has monopolized that part of the economic sector. And part of the reason that it's successful is because of China's history as a socialist country. And what happens is the government never had a monopoly or a sector dedicated specifically for transportation and ride sharing. So Didi saw this gap, took advantage of it, and created an entire monopoly there. And it's become essential to life in China. So whereas in the global north, we in US and Northwestern Europe, there's a history of liberal democracy for quite some while now. And one of the guarantees of that is that the market economy remains competitive. So hopefully they're supposed to prevent any monopolies from ever happening. So Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, all these companies, they should never become a monopoly. But I would like to add, they have had such a strong impact. For example, at Schiphol, the airport in Amsterdam, they now have a separate section for ride-sharing app pickups and taxis. So they already are very important to our life. So the last section, platformization. Platformization basically means when a company builds a tool or marketplace for transactions. So basically, I look at this especially in trading information and data. And the double logic platformization means basically means decentralizing the platform features and decentralizing platform data. Simply put, it means any social media, again, I'm going to use Facebook, they expand into the web and they allow other stores, advertisement, any other platform, people, even us content creators to create a business or do something that directs people away from Facebook, but it is through the platform of Facebook. That's decentralizing and expanding. And re-centralizing is basically all this data that these ads gather and everything comes right back to Facebook. And it's data that's ready to be translated and being sold and traded and however they want to use it. So it basically connects the infrastructure of a platform to its economic goal, which is to gain money. And this can also be seen as a good thing, but of course I'm focusing on the negative aspects behind a lot of this technological development, which I'll address in my conclusion. So basically the dark side of technological development. I would like to believe a lot of these are inadvertent causes of development, because obviously I don't think anyone developing technology is like, I want to harm society or have bad impact on it. It's always coming from a good place, but of course everything has a negative effect to it. It's just important that we look at them as well when developing. So the first one is privacy and censorship. So within censorship, I talked about this with content moderation especially, and I think the concern lies also with who is allowed to speak in our society. And diving deeper into the ethical dilemma of it is whose values do we legitimize? And this is especially, I think, very important because facts and everything are never, objective, as it is one group, usually the dominant group in whatever country or in whatever society you're in, that's controlling it. So social media reflects our society, and I will also show you who do we legitimize and who we don't think is right. And with privacy, this is what platformization is: data mining, using our data. So basically, each person has a data shadow, which is our persona online, the data, whatever we click on, ads, likes, shares, we form this personality, and it's basically a trading bargaining chip for money that these companies use. And although social media is very nice, it's very nice to stay in contact with people. It's very social thing. it's important to remember that there are technology companies, and we need to know where our data and information goes. At this point, everything's online. Even our meetings are online. There's no way to escape putting our information up there. Even on social media, it's no longer like, oh, don't post your face and stuff. It's important because even my association, when we're looking for new members and representatives, we look at people's social media like to see what they do outside in their life. So um, it's important that we understand that and also hold the companies accountable for where our information goes. Also, I'd like to mention a big scandal that happened with that is Cambridge Analytica a couple years ago. So, and this is not unheard of. It'll continue to happen until we figure out how to deal with it. Secondly, discrimination. I talked about that, machine learning especially, which could lead to AI, which is another hot topic of the day. And I think especially it's just very important for us to have diversity, more women, more people of color, everything, just so the development and the technology will be useful for everyone in society, which is also beneficial to the company because it'll bring more money. Um, Finally, a threat to democracy, maybe. Look at the perspective of platformization, especially of news organizations. So news organizations, they're basically the watchdogs of our society. They hold political figures accountable, they hold society accountable, and we need them to ensure that, especially in democratic countries, that democracy is there, or even in non-democratic countries, to hold people accountable for the actions they do. The problem with platformization is they're no longer newspapers. We have it all online. News is sold as headlines individually rather than having everything in one page. So if I want to read stock market on the newspaper, I have to see everything else while going to it. Whereas online, I just go straight to one place and I'm not exposed to any other news. So by doing so, by using our data and monetizing on that, they see that what headlines sell and what don't. So things are less reported on, which is very dangerous to society. And they'll focus on sensationalizing news and also contribute to polarization as they know who their readership is. For example, MSNBC is basically the Fox News of the left wing media, and Fox News obviously for the right wing. And even though I sometimes watch MSNBC and I've also watched Fox News, the thing is they will never address something that their audience will not support. And if they do, they clearly face a lot of backlash, even from the president or almost ex-president. So we can see that this is a problem. And in the bigger picture, from a political standpoint, social media technology is no longer a separate industry or part of the world. It's very, very important to the future of politics as well, and the policies that we create from now on, because there's no way. Technology is 100% part of our life in a great way, and we just need to remember to look at the negative aspects before it gets out of hand. So thank you very much, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.